Hello, everybody. I hope you're all here in sight. So, hello again, and a very warm welcome to IEEE VIT's amazing, invigorating, and stimulating Techloop Bootcamp. Let's start with an insightful introduction to IEEE VIT. It is, for all intents and purposes, a student chapter under IEEE International. We are a bunch of tech design enthusiasts working relentlessly on very cool projects. So next up, we have a little tour through all of our flagship events. Yeah, so there's Palette. So Palette 21, which was a 36-hour design hackathon and a huge success with over 500 participants from over 65 countries. There's Capture the Flag, which explores the nuances of cybersecurity, and of course, our pride and joy, Enigma, which is a cryptic hunt that remains unsolved and undefeated for 7 straight years. But hey, Enigma 8.0 is coming up really soon, so it could be your time to shine. We hope to see you there as well. Promptly moving on to our main star of the evening, that is the Techloop Bootcamp. Techloop in itself is a one-of-a-kind IEEE VIT initiative where we conduct sessions for anyone and everyone interested in various domains of tech. Think of it as like a student teaching student program. We hope to make it an interactive session to proliferate technical skills among the student community, and it is our sincerest hope that you take something good out of this session. Uh, so this particular bootcamp is amalgamation, or you can say that it's an assortment of 5 wonderfully thrilling domains. We have app dev, game dev, blockchain, cybersecurity, and today we're going to start with MERN. It'll be taken by Harsh Gupta and Varun Murpani. So here I'll leave you in very capable hands and hope you have a good time.
Good evening, everyone. This is Varun Murpani here with my colleague Harsh Gupta on behalf of IEEE VIT in association with IEEE CET to give you a session on Intro to MERN Stack and web development in specific. So to start off with, I'll give you an introduction about ourselves. So I'm pursuing BTech and in CSE branch, and there's Harsh.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Harsh and I'm pursuing BTech in CS with specialization in information security from VIT Vellore, and we are here on behalf of IEEE VIT. So I would hand over the session to Varun and we can continue with the session. So go ahead, Varun.
Yeah, so let's start with this session. So the first question that comes to our mind when we read the heading Intro to Modern Web Development is what is web development, right? So in very simple terms, I would say web development is the process of creating, maintaining, and regularly updating the websites. Like, you keep adding features. So that's what refers to web development. When we talk about making a website, there are various aspects to be considered. So, to sum up everything, we have design, which is taken care by the designers, which they handle the UI and UX part of it, and they add aesthetic value to the website, right? And then there's development. Development can be further broken down into two parts, which is the front end development and back end development. To tell you what front end and back end development is, I hope this picture makes everything clear. So what front-end development is everything that you can see on your screen. And then there's back-end development, which refers to everything you can't. Let me give an example to make it very clear. Whenever you go to any website, so whatever is visible in front of you, that would be your front end, and whatever happens under the hood, right? That is called the back end. And we will dive deep into front end as well as back end today. So to explain what front end is, let me tell you, a front end developer usually uses three main tools, which are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to make a website, to make the front end part of the website. First up is HTML, and with that, it's called the content layer. I want all of you to type in any HTML tags if you know already. I'm waiting in the comment section. All right, there's a P tag, correct, Sai Prasad? Yeah, there's the head tag, HTML tag, body tag. Oh, all of you must be aware with HTML already. Yeah, there's the H1 tag, correct. So what HTML does is it defines a website and adds structure to it. So the full form of HTML is hypertext markup language, and it gives you the overall structure. So whatever you include in your website is part of hypertext markup language, and they are within the Angular brackets, or they're also called the markup tags. And that's just a quick fact about HTML. There's the title tag, A tag, IMG tag. Whoa, all of you are really aware what an HTML does. So let me tell you one thing. People, I don't know why, but they hate HTML language. But the thing is, the entire website or entire internet is built on HTML. So I don't like these double standards. And welcome to my TED Talk. I see a lot of responses: the head tag, the image tag. So here's a quick example of how you can write HTML. This is a very small code snippet, which I'll explain in brief. So there's the doc type HTML, which tells you, what kind of a document it is. And as people mentioned in the chat box, there's the HTML tag, body tag. So what an HTML tag does is it tells you where the HTML starts, and body tag tells you body is everything that you can see on your screen. So that would comprise the body tag. And then there's an H1 tag, which tells you it's a header tag, and it goes from H1 to H7, H1 being the largest and H7 being the smallest. So as you can see, there's a hello there in the code snippet, which is getting printed on the screen. And then there's an image tag, which is followed by the source of the image, which is sites.png. And as you can see, it's being displayed on the screen, followed by the closing tags, which is the body and the HTML tag. I see a lot of comments. The PR tag.
Okay, but Varun, I think that the website looks not very appealing. So how can you make the website more attractive? Like,
All right, that's where CSS steps in, right? It's called the presentation layer for that purpose only. So it's called cascading style sheets, and it adds visual appeal and basically enhances the entire presentation of the website. So we can make responsive websites using CSS, and let's not dive deep into responses for now. And let me tell you how I modified that HTML website and I added CSS to it now, right? So as you can see, there's the body tag, which tells you the entire screen. As I told you, everything is part of the body tag. So I've set a background color of aquamarine. I like that color. And then, as I told you, there's an H1 tag which defines hello there. So as you can see, I've defined the font family. Yeah, I just found Franklin Gothic to be quite cool. That's why I added it, followed by Arial, which is quite an often, widely used font, followed by where I want the font to be, which is in the center, and the color, which is quite self-explanatory. Then, as you saw, the image is being placed in the center with a border, and I've just added, I've defined how the image should look using CSS. So the size of the image does matter, and it just enhances how your website feels, right? So to tell you the basic difference between HTML and CSS, HTML gives you the structure of the website, and CSS adds, presentation or visual appeal to it, which is the color, etc.
Okay, so Varun, the website is still very boring. Like it looks appealing, but how can I add more interactivity to the website? Like, how can I improve user interaction?
The answer is right there on your screen with that we can use JavaScript, which is also called the behavior layer. So what it's used for is it adds functionality to the website and lets the user interact with the website. By interaction, I mean, you see all these fancy drag drop forms? Yeah, they are made using JavaScript. And just a quick fact again, that it's saved with the .js extension. All right, we spoke about the bird previously, right? The HTML defines the content, CSS adds color to it, and now this bird can fly, which we made. We made this bird fly using JavaScript, and as you can see, that's the bird's functionality. This is a very commonly used JavaScript example. So as you can see, without refreshing the page, the icons are changing. That's happening using JavaScript. All right, to sum up the difference between HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, here's a very cool example. So HTML tells you the structure of the car, and then there's CSS, which adds color to it, followed by JavaScript. So HTML gives the content or how the website should look. CSS tells you which color the website should be, or enhances the visual appeal. And then there's JavaScript, which is used for the functionality of the website. So for in a car, the wheel moves, right? The wheel rotates, and the engine, how the engine should work, is the functionality of the car. That is added using JavaScript. But Harsh, I do have a doubt here. So there are four wheels in a car, and if we are in a four-wheel drive car, we would have to define the structure or the functionality of the wheel again and again. So is wouldn't that be redundant? Is there an easier way out?
Yes, Varun, it would of course be very redundant, like coding the four wheels again and again. Okay, so here I would like to introduce you to frameworks. So let me tell you what frameworks are. So frameworks are basically some pre-written code by some developer, which can be used by other people on the internet, or it's something that you can integrate in your own project to make your life a lot easier. You know, you can get an overall development experience that's much better when you were writing native code. Okay, what do I mean by native code is the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that Varun explained a few slides ago. Okay, so it also helps you maintain a very organized code base. So if you're working on a large project, your code can get messy very soon. So it helps you maintain that, maintain a very organized structure, and also it allows you for a very fast and robust development. Okay. So here we have a few examples of frameworks, that is Vue.js, AngularJS, React.js, Express, and so on. Okay. So now we move on to a front-end framework. So what is a front-end framework? A front-end framework is basically nothing complex than just a framework, but that's specific to the front end that Varun explained. So it's something that deals with specifically HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and gives you an organized structure for your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files and your entire front end project. And of course, frameworks save you a lot of time because you are not writing everything from scratch. You don't have to write everything line by line. Okay. So now we have come to our first letter in MERN. So that is R. So I would like all of you to guess what R means. What does the R in MERN stand for? So just drop it in the chat. Okay, so I'll be waiting for some responses. Okay, Asta says it's React. Sai says it's React. Shivan. Okay, yeah, you all are absolutely right, and you're already aware what the R in MERN stands for. So that's React. Okay. So there are a lot of frameworks out there, as I told you. Like there is Vue.js, there is React.js, there is Angular, there's Backbone.js, and so many. So I'll tell you that all frameworks are good, but React is one of the most popular and most widely used frameworks by developers out there. And React is built on top of JavaScript. So React is basically backed by Facebook, and you can of course guess why it's so popular. And I'll let you know the Google Trends. So this is a screenshot of the Google Trends, and if you can see that the red line indicates the popularity of React, and you can see that it has been growing over the years. So React is a great community of developers. So when you go ahead and you learn React, I'm sure that you will be facing least problems. I think any doubt that you can think of will already have been answered in Stack Overflow or forums like that. So React is a huge community. Okay. So these are some of the tech giants that use React.js. And if you know of any other tech giants, please drop it in the comments. I'll be looking forward to that. So first we have Facebook. So that's quite obvious because Facebook is the one who created React, and Facebook's code base is heavily dependent on React. So Facebook has over 20,000 components of React. So what components are will come into that in a few slides. Uh, but I'll tell you that Facebook is heavily dependent on React and become to Instagram. So if you don't know, before Instagram was acquired by Facebook in 2012, it didn't have a web version. So the web version of Instagram was built after it was acquired by Facebook in 2012. And that's quite obvious, it was built on top of React. So the Instagram web that you see, that's built on React. Then we have WhatsApp, then we have Netflix, Uber, Airbnb, and so many popular websites out there that are built on top of React. Okay, so now I come back to the example of the car that Varun was giving. Okay, so let us assume that you write 20 lines of code just to define a wheel. So a car has four wheels, right? So you would be writing those 20 lines of code again and again for each wheel, and that would amount to roughly 80 lines of code, right? But that's quite a tedious job to do. So we have repeated code everywhere. So let's just try and get to the solution. So you have often heard about your teachers telling you use the principle of try, but I know you don't. So if you don't know, let me tell you what try stands for, and it stands for do not repeat yourself. So try is a concept that is not very specific to React or any framework. It's just a concept in programming in general. So, if while coding or programming, you think that you're repeating your code, you're always repeating yourself. That means you're writing bad code, and it doesn't meet the community standards. That's what we mean by try, and we always try to follow this principle. Okay. So now, does React solve this problem? So React has this code reusability, with the help of which we can, achieve this dry concept. Uh,
All right, but you've been telling us how React is useful and how we can use it. But can you tell me how it's achieved actually?
Yeah, so I'll tell you. So what if I tell you you can write those 20 lines of code at one place and then use it in your website or application again and again without having to repeat yourself? Wouldn't that be great? So that is something that's offered by React. So how React does that is with the help of components that I mentioned a few slides ago. So what components are? Components are just JavaScript codes that are defined at one place, and then you can use it again and again. For example, if you can see this fourth box has been defined in one place and it has been used at multiple places. It has been used in three places. Then if we look at the circle that's used in two places, and you can get the point, right? So that's how React offers code reusability, and that's one of the greatest features of React. Okay, so just to demonstrate, here's a small code snippet of React and how we write components in React with the help of JavaScript. So this is just a simple component that creates a user that comes to the website. So it's hello and this is name. Please don't get intimidated by the code. It might seem complex if you haven't studied React, but that's absolutely fine. We are just giving you a brief overview, like how does a component look in React. So this is how the code in React looks like. And moving on, React has a lot more to offer apart from code reusability. It's very easy to use, it's scalable, it's flexible, and offers a lot of features. But we are not diving deep into React. And if you want to learn about React more, you can dive into the resources that we'll provide at the end of the Techloop session. Okay.
Now that we are done with the front end, how the website looks, do you guys have any doubts? Because please drop it in the chat box.
Yeah, I want you all to get the grasp of what we are explaining, and if you have any doubts, just drop it in the chat. Feel free to question.
Yeah, Savi says Netflix used to be on Flask, right? In the start, yes, it's already been answered in the comments. So that's what MERN stack has been growing in popularity, and that's why even they have shifted from Flask to MERN.
Yeah, so you can just guess the top MNCs that are using React for the development. Okay, so I see that there are no doubts in the chat, and I think Varun, if we can proceed.
All right. So only today I was, scrolling through my Insta feed, and I don't know where all the posts were coming from. Every time I refresh, there was a different post coming up. So can you tell me how that happens?
Okay, yes, Varun. Like whenever you refresh your feed, you see new posts. So what these posts are, I'll tell you, these are just nothing but data, right? So where does the data come from? Okay, so I want you all to guess in the chat, where does the data come from? Where does the post come from? Any guesses? Also, Savi says, I want to learn React. Yeah, so you can, go to the resources section. We'll provide the resources at the end of the session or maybe in the description. So you can check.
We would suggest you, if you're a complete beginner, we would suggest you to go in order of HTML, CSS, followed by JavaScript, so that then you can learn React, which would be much easier.
Yeah. So any guesses on where the data comes from? Okay, so I'll tell you where the data comes from. So the data is basically stored in a place that is known as the database. And that's pretty much it. What is a database? A database is a storage location, a place where data comes from. Okay, so you're right, data comes from the database. So that was pretty simple. Now we move on to why do we use the database and not anything else like a file or something like that? So there are various reasons why we do not use anything apart from a database. The first and foremost reason is security. So if you're using file system, you won't be getting security. You won't be getting a secure access and authorization to the data. That is one thing. And then when we are dealing with the file system, that is a lot of complex code. That is literally a lot of complex code you have to write. And you have to know the exact location of the file. And it's very difficult to retrieve the data. And there are various other reasons, like there is redundancy of data, there is inconsistency of data. And one more very important reason, that is backup and recovery. You have to, take manual backups, and you have to and recovery is a pain. So that pretty much explains why we use the database. Okay, so now we move on to different types of database. So there are basically two types of database, that is SQL databases and NoSQL databases. So what SQL databases are, I'll tell you. This SQL stands for Structured Query Language. Uh, okay, so this might sound very complex, but don't be afraid. I'll tell you. Any database that uses this structured query language, this SQL language, is known as a SQL database. So let me help you first visualize how a database looks like, and then I'll tell you what queries are. Okay, so this is how a SQL database looks like. So basically, you can imagine an Excel sheet. So what happens in an Excel sheet is you have workbooks, and then you have sheets inside workbooks, and their data is being stored in the form of rows and columns. So similarly, here, instead of sheets, we have tables in the database, and in each table, data is being stored in the form of rows and columns. Okay, so here you can see that this is the table of employees where we store all the employee details in the form of rows and columns. So that's pretty much a SQL database. And now we move on to a NoSQL database. So I hope that you understood a SQL database before I move on to NoSQL database.
Harsh, there's a doubt in the chat box which says, what is redundancy of
Yeah,
data? Would you
okay.
like to take that?
So what is redundancy of data? So redundancy of data basically means that you store a data at one place, and then if you're using a file system or something like that, you will be by mistake or due to some error in your code, some bugs in your code, maybe storing that data again and again in that file. So that is basically what we mean by redundancy of data. Storing the data maybe again and again. That is not required. That is not a very efficient way of doing things, right? So are there any other doubts? And I just wanted to mention if you understood what a SQL database is. Okay, so I hope that it's clear and we move on to a NoSQL database. So a NoSQL database is nothing but a database that uses JSON to store its data.
Okay, but what is JSON?
Okay, that was a great question, Varun. So if anyone in the chat knows, what is JSON, you can guess what JSON stands for. JSON.
Yeah, not JSON. Uh,
Yeah, it's JSON. JSON. Okay, so let me tell you what JSON stands for. So JSON is basically JavaScript object notation, and you know what JSON is? It is a lightweight data interchange format. So what do I mean by a lightweight data interchange format? Okay, so let me tell you, any communication that's happening over the web, like whenever communication happens, we exchange data, right? We exchange images, we exchange messages, and we exchange all sorts of data. So I can tell you in maximum cases, the data that is being exchanged is in the form of JSON. It's not always, but in maximum of the times, the it's in the form of JSON. So JSON is nothing but plain text where data is stored in the form of keys and values. So here you can see we have a JSON object where we are storing data. So I store my name and I store my chapter to which I belong. So the name is Harsh Gupta and chapter is IEEE VIT. So I can say that the name and the chapter are the keys, and Harsh and IEEE VIT are the values. So to sum up, like JSON is nothing complex. It's just plain text where data is being stored in the form of keys and values. That's all about JSON. And Savi says in the chat, dictionaries. So yes, you can relate with dictionaries that we have in Python. That if you have studied Python, you must be knowing dictionaries. It's similar to that. There also we store data in the form of keys and values. and it's very similar, but it's just plain text format that's accepted over the web, that's accepted by all languages. It's not specific to any language. Okay, so I hope you understood JSON, and let's move on. So basically, you can assume these to be data, and they are stored in a structured way in the form of JSON in a NoSQL database. So let me give you more clarity on this. So if you can, earlier in a SQL database, I told you we have tables, and inside tables, data is being stored in the form of rows and columns. But here, instead of tables, we have collections, and the collection, and it is a collection of documents. So any document that you see over here, that's nothing but JSON. So it's a collection of JSON. A document is nothing but just JSON. So data being stored in the form of JSON, and we have a collection of JSONs, and that is what makes the database. So I would like to just sum up SQL and NoSQL. So in SQL, data is stored in the form of rows and columns, as you can see, and in NoSQL database, data is stored in the form of JSON. So that's about it. And I think there is a doubt, form of text. Are there any other forms? Yes, the data is stored in various forms, in a NoSQL database, we use JSON to store the data. I told you in a SQL database, we use rows and columns structure to store the data. And basically, if you're talking about data interchange on the web, so it's basically JSON that's widely used. And there are other forms as it's answered in the chat, but they are very less used. It's 90% of the times it's JSON only. Okay, so I hope you're very clear with the SQL database and a NoSQL database, and you can easily relate. So please drop a comment in the chat if you understood what SQL and NoSQL databases are, and if you need any more clarity, we are very happy to answer. Okay, so I assume that's very clear. So we move on. And I told you about queries. So what query means? Okay, so you have stored your data in the database. Now, you want to retrieve your data. You just don't keep the data in the database. You use that data. So you want to retrieve the data. So that is where a query comes into picture, and you query the data to get that data. So let me give you an example. So here we are trying to get the users whose age is above 18. So you can see how a SQL query looks like, and how a NoSQL query looks like. So in a NoSQL query, you can see we have users.find and some parameters that you don't need to worry about. And if this is looking complex, just that's absolutely fine. So I just wanted to give you a picture of how queries look like in a SQL database and a NoSQL database. In a SQL database, you can see it's like select whatever properties from users where age is greater than 18. And limit just stands for like we want to get the 5 users only. Okay, so I hope that was clear about queries. And if you have any query, you can drop it in the chat.
I see what
And
you did there.
yeah, so okay, I hope there are no queries. And you know, uh, the question remains like what to use, SQL database and NoSQL database. So if you're a beginner, you can go ahead with any of the databases like a SQL database and as well as a NoSQL database. But I would recommend you to go with a NoSQL database. Uh, because it has a lot of flexibility. You can see data is being stored in the form of rows and columns. Sorry, data is being stored in the form of JSON. I'm very sorry for that. So data is being stored in the form of JSON and in key value pairs. So that gives you a lot of flexibility over a structured format like rows and columns. So, okay. So now we have come to the M in MERN. So any guesses what the M in MERN stands for? Please drop it in the chat.
Funny responses are also welcome.
Yeah, sure. Okay, Savi says Mongo. Yes, actually, that's absolutely right. Okay, Sai also says MongoDB. Yeah, so I think you guys know a lot. Like M stands for MongoDB, and that's absolutely correct. It's a NoSQL database, and that's one of the widely used and most popular databases out there in terms of NoSQL databases. So yes, we would recommend you to go ahead and learn MongoDB if you want to explore MERN stack. So MongoDB is something that integrates very well with MERN stack. That React, when we are using React, it integrates very well. So that's how MongoDB advertises itself. So yes, you can
Are
go
you
ahead and
trying
learn.
to are you trying to advertise MongoDB here?
I guess because we are taking a session on MERN, so yes, MongoDB is the way to go.
There's a doubt, not a doubt, but it says mongoose. Would you like to take that up?
Okay, I'll surely take that up. Okay, so Mongoose is basically something, Mongoose is a package that allows me to use MongoDB as a database in the backend. So, it can sound complex to some people. So we'll come to that in the later sections. We'll explain backend and everything. So then we'll come to that. But Mongoose is something that allows you to use MongoDB as a database in your project.
You will discover packages just in a while.
Yeah, just in some time. Okay. So I hope you all are clear with databases. Okay. So now I have a doubt, Varun. Like we know what data, how data is dealt with in the database, and then we also covered the UI UX part, that is the front end part, and all those things. But how is the data communicated to the front end? Like how to fetch the data from the database and show it on the front end? How do we show the posts?
All right, so that's where backend comes in. Backend is used to handle sensitive logic and just data manipulation in general. Most of the websites you visit will follow a three-tier architecture, which is the client followed by a server and then a database. So I would like to make it very clear. A client is a user. You, the user, are the client. And then there's a server which processes your request or, tells, lets you decide what happens when you ask for something. And then there's a database through which there's a database and you get things out of it using a server. All right, so let's take an example of a college, VIT. We have medium of instruction, which is English, set up so that people can talk to each other freely, and it's much easier for people to talk, right? Imagine if someone's talking in English, the other person's talking in Spanish or German. It would be really hard to communicate. So there are a set of rules which we call protocol, which have been set up by the management, VIT, so that it's for easier communication. That brings us to our next topic, which is the hypertext transfer protocol. As I already told you what a protocol is, they are the set of rules defined. So hypertext transfer protocol does the exact same job. They are client-server protocols, so between the client, the user, and the server, the backend. That's where HTTP takes care of the communication, and it lets you fetch resources. So there are two parts of an HTTP, which is the HTTP request and an HTTP response. So what Yeah, let's ask you a question now. Give me a real life example of a request and a response. Just plain English. What is a request and what is a response? You can go ahead and define request and response in English if you want. Mint bomb, that's a funny one. Lack of resources, maybe. All right, asking is requesting, and response is. So what an HTTP request and response does is exactly the same. So you, the user, are requesting something from the backend, and the server gives it back to you. That's a response. So for example, I asked my mom for a glass of water. So that's a request I'm making to my mother, and then she can either get me the glass of water or tell me, go get it yourself. So that's a response. She'll send it back to me. We will discuss HTTP request and response in detail now. So every HTTP request that we send has a structure to be followed, which comprises of four main parts, which is the URL, verb, headers, and body. Let's explore each one of these. So first of this URL, which is it tells you what kind of a request it is. For example, it can be HTTP or an HTTPS. So an HTTPS request, S stands for secure, which tells you, this website is certified, and it adds a lot of safety. That comes under the cybersecurity part, which we'll be having in a few days. And then there's the website to which we are going. That's defined, followed by the exact location. Let's take an example of a URL, which is an HTTPS followed by Instagram.com and IEEE VAT value. So when you visit Instagram.com, there are billions and billions of users, right? How do you exactly locate a single user? That's where we define the path of IEEE VAT value. And that would take you to our Instagram page. Now that we're done with URL, there are request verbs. So it's a method to tell the server what kind of action the client wants. So for example, I was requesting my mom to get me a glass of water. So what kind of request is it? Is it like I want something from her, or does she want something from me? So there are four main request methods, which are post, which is used to create a resource. So when you go to Instagram and you're signing up for the very first time, you would be entering your username, password, email address, phone number, etc. So you're creating a resource. So it's a post request. And then there's a GET request, which is used to read a resource. So I tell you, I want to see this post. So that's a request. That's a GET request that I'm making. And if you if you ask for this post, you would get it back. That's a GET request. And then there's a patch. So you've already created an account using a post request. So now you want to only change your password. So you wouldn't want to enter username, mobile number, all the details again, right? So that's where the patch request comes in. It lets you update a part of a resource. So only the password in this slide. And a delete request is quite self-explanatory, which is used to delete a resource. So when I want to delete my account, it would be a delete request. And then there are request headers. Lets you pass additional information. By additional information, I mean, it tells you which version of HTTP we are using, and it also tells you which language it is in. So all that is part of request headers. And then there's request body. So when you are logging into Instagram, you would be entering your username and password, right? So somehow it has to travel from your laptop to the server so that it processes and verifies if it's right or wrong. So the details are sent using a request body. Yeah, don't try to hack my account because these are not my real details. So now that we are done with an HTTP request, then there's an HTTP response. So you've asked something from the server. Now you're going to get it back as a response. So even a response has four major parts, which are the headers, body, status code, and status message. Same as a request header, a response header does the same thing. It lets you pass additional information, the language, the version, etc. And then there's a response body. So I asked for that specific post, right? Now I'm getting it back on my screen. So that is part of the response body. So it's the data which is retrieved from the database. And yeah, so this is a page you must have all seen. So I want you to guess what kind of an error this is. As I mentioned, there are status code and error messages. What kind of error do you think this is? I'm waiting for your responses in the comment section. Just give it a shot. Yes, Sai and yes, Midbomb. This is a 404 error and website not found. That's correct. So that's where we enter status code and messages. So status code tells you tells you if the request you've asked for is valid or not, and it is returned from the database to the user screen as a message or a status code. So there are informational, success, redirectional, client error, and server error. These are the forms of response status codes that we receive. Let's discuss all these error codes with the help of an example. So you go to a coffee shop and you ask for a coffee. So the barista tells you, okay, I'll get you a coffee, but do you want soy milk or full cream? So that's a response where you're asking for more information. So that's an informational status code, and it's usually of hundreds, in the hundreds range. Moving on, there's a success code which is in the range of 200. So you go to the coffee shop again and you ask, I'd like a large latte, please. So you're making a very specific request, right? You're telling what you exactly want. So the barista serves you that. That's a successful request, and the response code would be of 200s. Then there's a redirectional which is of 300. So this coffee shop has moved permanently or temporarily to some other place. So it would show you a status code of 300s. And as we discussed the 404 the page not found, that's a client side error. So you have cheeseburger, please, and you go to a coffee shop and you're asking for a cheeseburger, and they do not have it. I mean, you know it's a coffee shop only, and you're asking for something. They do not serve a cheeseburger, so it's a client side error. You're asking for something which doesn't even exist, so it's obviously a client side error. And then there's a server side error, which is you go to the coffee shop and the coffee machine is broken, so we can't serve you any coffee. So that's the error on the server's end, right? Nice one, Savi. Yeah, barista coffee is always 300. And then to sum up all the status codes, we have the hundreds, which is hold on, okay, we've received part of your information. Give us more information so that we can give you the exact response. And there's of 200s, which is here you go, which is a successful request. Here's your coffee. And then there's go away, which tells you, we've moved somewhere else. Kindly do not come back here. And then there's 400s, which is you screwed up. Basically, you're asking for something which doesn't exist. And then there's 500s, which is I screwed up, which is a problem on the server's end, which is the coffee shop is broken. So let us discuss the request and response cycle. I hope you all are clear with what an HTTP request and a response is. Kindly drop in any doubts if you have. Till then, I'll proceed to explain the picture. So you are asking for a specific URL and you request for it. It goes to the backend and it checks whether it's possible or not. So if we have to take an example of Instagram, so you would ask for a certain picture. For example, you go to a public account and you want to see this picture of IEEE VIT's Techloop logo, Techloop promotion. What you would do is you would get a response back, right? Which is the image of Techloop. But what happens if the account is private? What would happen then is you would not get a response back, which is also a response, right? It's telling you that you're not authorized to visit that website. So response can be either positive or negative. It can be of any type, but it's still a response that you're not allowed to fetch the resource or you're getting the post back. So that's the response and request and response cycle. And hopefully you understood it.
Okay, Varun, I have a doubt. Like you explained what requests are, you explained what responses are, and but I want to ask you if there is an efficient way to handle these requests and responses.
So that's where an API steps in. In very simple words, API is a method for two different entities or services to talk to each other. Plain English, right? And now I would like to explain this statement with the help of an example. Now you go to makemytrip.com and you want to search for a flight day after tomorrow from here, from Delhi to Mumbai. What you would do there is you would get a list of responses, which would be from SpiceJet, Indigo, Vistara, and various other airlines. How do you get all the flight operators responding to a single request, which is you're requesting from Delhi to Mumbai? How are all the flights getting listed? So what happens is all these websites of SpiceJet, Indigo, Vistara have an API already made. What happens when we go to Make My Trip is it accesses all the websites and gives you the response. These are the available flights for you to go, and that's what we mentioned. An API is something where two entities talk to each other. So you see, Make My Trip is talking to SpiceJet, Indigo, Vistara, etc. That would be how an API works. So you have a front-end developer which has a very flashy cycle, and then there's a back-end developer which runs under the hood, and then there's an API which lets you communicate between the two.
Okay, so I would like to take over. Like, how does this even work? How do we implement this backend that we talked about? Okay, so now we have come to the N in MERN, and I would like you all to again guess like what the N in MERN stands for. Please drop your guesses in the chat. Okay, Sai says Node.js. Yeah, Sai, you're absolutely right. N stands for Node.js in MERN. So, let's get into what Node.js is. So if you can see here, Node.js, we can define Node.js as an event-driven input-output server-side JavaScript environment based on V8. But I know that was very, very complex for you all. So, okay, I'll try to simplify that further. Okay, so what happened some years back is if you had to write JavaScript code could be written only in the browser. Okay, so suppose you want to write JavaScript, you go to your favorite browser, you go to Chrome, you go to Safari, you go to any browser, and you can just go ahead and run JavaScript code. But let me tell you how the browsers run JavaScript code. So browsers basically use what we call a JavaScript engine. So with the help of a JavaScript engine, a browser can run JavaScript code. To sum up, you can write JavaScript code in the browser, and browsers run JavaScript code with the help of JavaScript engines. And there are, various JavaScript engines that are out there used by different browsers. Okay, so I'll tell you what Chrome uses. So Chrome uses one of the most popular JavaScript engines that's V8, and V8 engine is the fastest JavaScript engine out there till date. So what happened after that is you can see this great person. He is Ryan Dahl, and what he did is he took the JavaScript V8 engine from Chrome and he embedded that into a C++ program, and made an application out of it, and that is what is known as Node.js. So Node.js is nothing but a runtime environment where you can run JavaScript code. So earlier it was on a browser. Now we made an application out of it, and that offers your platform to run JavaScript code on your local machine. Okay, so that's pretty much Node.js, allowing you to run JavaScript on your local machine. So before proceeding further, I would like to ask if there are any doubts, and if there are any, please do mention them in the chat. Okay, I feel that there are no doubts, so we'll proceed further. Okay, so what happens if you start writing code from scratch? Like, you write each line, means you're implementing each and every step line by line. So this is what happens to you. So we have a solution for this, and we have node packages to our rescue. So now we explain what packages are. So packages are again some pre-written code that has been written by someone else, and you can very easily, integrate that in your own project, and you can just sit and relax like the person that you see on the slide. So that's what packages offer you. So let me give you an example. For example, you want to, render an image on the screen, but you have no idea how to do that. You don't know how to deal with images and complex stuff like that. So what you do is you go to npmjs.com, and I'll tell you what npm is in just the next slide. So that's npmjs is the website. You go to that website, you find a package that offers this feature of rendering an image on the screen, and you just install that package, and with one line of code you can use that package, and you can integrate this cool feature in your project. So that's what packages are, something that makes our life easier, some pre-written code by someone else that you can use in your own project. Okay, so now what NPM is. So NPM stands for Node Package Manager. And what it allows you to do is, it's very evident from the name itself. It allows you to, install packages, uninstall packages, and maybe update packages as well. And do all sorts of things with packages, basically manage everything. And that's why it's known as the Node Package Manager. So if anyone of you has worked with Python, so you must be knowing about pip. So pip is the package manager for Python, and npm is the package manager for Node. And they are not the same. Like pip is a very small library and npm is a very vast library, but still, if you have studied Python, you can compare. And if you haven't, please just ignore that. Uh, just focus on npm. That's the Node package manager. And if you have understood Node Package Manager, just tell me in the chat that you have understood. and we can proceed.
Yeah, life just becomes very easy when you use packages. And I think we can take this moment to explain what Mongoose is, as there was a comment on Mongoose.
Yes, yes, there was some doubt about Mongoose. So now I'll explain what Mongoose is. So if you directly want to use MongoDB as the database in your project, it would again be a tedious job to do that. But we have node packages as we told you, and Mongoose is one of those packages which you can use to have a very smooth integration and a very smooth workflow, and you can just easily integrate the MongoDB database in your project. Okay. So I'll also demonstrate how do we use npm. So that was just a command npm I cause, and the hyphen d flag is for a development environment. So npm I stands for npm install, and this is how you just install a package. And we have a cow printed on the screen with just one line of code. That's so cool.
Yeah, literally just one line of npm install followed by the package name, and that gives
Yeah.
you a pre-written set of code.
Yeah, so that's so cool about NPM. And that's why, Node.js is the trending tech stacks of the industry. Okay, so let me tell you where the packages are stored. When you install packages, they have to be stored somewhere on your machine, right? So they are stored in a folder that's known as node modules. So I can tell you that node packages are really heavy in terms of their size. So if you are making a project that heavily relies on node packages, your project can get, in quite your project size can grow quite large. Node modules is very heavy. Okay, so we are now done with Node.js, and you have any doubts specific to Node.js, please drop it in the comments. We'll be waiting for any doubts.
I see there are no doubts as such, so we can continue.
Yeah, so we can continue. Now we have come to the final letter of MERN. We have explored M, we have explored R, we have explored N, and we have finally come to E. And E stands for Express.js. So what Express.js is, I told you about front-end frameworks, right? Now Express.js is a back-end framework that you can install with the help of npm, and it's a very popular backend framework that's out there, and it has been existing from the time of Node.js, and it has been used for years. So Node.js is often confused with Express. So I think you will have a lot of clarity after this. So Node.js is nothing but a runtime environment where you run your JavaScript code. And Express.js offers you that JavaScript code that you'll run in Node.js. So Express is the framework that allows you to write your backend with the help of JavaScript, and you can make your entire backend with the help of Express. That makes your life a lot more easier. You can do it with the help of plain JavaScript as well, but again, I told you that frameworks are so useful, and you can use Express.js as one of the most popular frameworks to build your backend. Okay, so we won't be diving into the depths of Express.js and how do we create a backend with the help of Express.js, because that would be a lot of code. But you can surely explore, and I would like you all to explore about Express.js, and please refer to a resources section that will provide probably at the end of the session to learn about Express. So why do we need Express.js? So I told you that's quite popular. It allows you for scalable development. It's quite simple, and it has a lot of flexibility, and it makes your life much easier. It reduces the time that you'll be taking to develop the project, and it's cost effective as well. So there are a lot of features of Express. Okay. So now, do you have any doubt about Express.js, Node.js, any confusions, anything like that? Please drop it in the comments. We'll be very happy to answer. Okay, I'll wait for a few more seconds, and then if there are no doubts, I'll proceed. Okay, so I feel that there are no doubts, and I assume that you'll have a great clarity. So we move on. Okay. So that's pretty much our MERN stack, and we have covered all the four letters M, E, R, and MERN. And here I would like to summarize what the MERN stack was. Okay, so before me summarizing what MERN stack was, I would like you all to answer like what each letter stands for. It's even there on the screen, but I would like you all to just answer.
Yeah, just tell us what you feel about each stack or what you learned today in general.
Yeah, and then I'll summarize the entire thing so you have great clarity on that. Feel free to drop in any doubts or anything that you would like us to take up.
So much.
Okay. Okay, Savi says so much.
It might seem a lot to take in at first, but
Yeah. So if you have any doubts in any parts that we explained, so you can tell us. We'll be very happy to answer those. Okay, where to get resources? I think if the resources are not in the description, we'll provide them at the end of the Tech Loop session. Uh, Someone from IEEE will surely you'll get the resources. Don't worry about that. You'll get it at the end of the session.
let's proceed with the summary then.
Yeah, so we'll proceed with the summary. Okay, so to sum up, we have React.js on top, that is our front end part that we covered, our front end framework where we design our entire UI and UX. We have our database, that is MongoDB, that is the NoSQL database. And then, we have the middle layer, that is our backend, that is hosted on our server. And so the backend basically comprises of Node.js and Express. Node.js is the place where we run JavaScript code, and that JavaScript code, is written using this framework called Express. So that's pretty much to sum up MERN. We have React.js as the front end, MongoDB as the database, and Express.js along with Node in the backend. So that was pretty much about MERN, and let's just move on. And if you think that you can't use Node.js for everything, you can, because we showed you examples of one of the top MNCs and the companies that use MERN stack, that not use MERN stack, but use specific things about, like, some companies use React, and we'll tell you about others as well. So these are the companies that's built on top of Node.js. So we have PayPal. So PayPal also uses React, so it follows proper MERN stack. We have Netflix that also uses React. Uber also used React. We have LinkedIn for Node.js, eBay, Walmart, Groupon, and many more. So if these top MNCs can use it, you can use it for your project as well, and that would be a great option for your web dev career. So moving on, this might be very offensive, but just take it as a meme. And this was just to tell you about the growing popularity of Node.js and how it the Google Trends are. We showed you the Google Trends, and that was just advertising our tech stack. That was the MERN stack. So
Yeah,
that's
so
pretty.
as you saw, JavaScript was used literally everywhere. So I think that tells you our preference, what our preference is. But I would tell you, feel free to check out all other languages, all other frameworks, etc. Only then you would understand the importance of Moonstack. And I think that would be that from us. And thank you for joining us, and please do follow us on our social media accounts, which is IEEE, and there you can find all other social media accounts as well. I hope the session was informative and you got at least some knowledge about web development or Stack on the whole.
Yeah. So, thank you for being such a great audience. We had a lot of fun, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I feel you had a lot of takeaways from this session, and you know much more than you knew before this session. So, thank you.
So we do have other sessions, which is 12th August, we have app dev coming up, 13th, we have game dev, 14th, we have blockchain, and 15th, we have cybersecurity. So please stay in the loop, and I hope to see you all there.
Yeah. So, even after this, you have any doubts, just drop it in the chat. We'll be more than happy to answer those. Anything related to web dev, any doubts in general. Okay, Minform says awesome. Arush says great session. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being a great audience.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience with you all.
All right, bye bye. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, see you tomorrow. Our friends will be there for app dev. We have covered web dev and we have a lot of sessions. So just stay tuned. Thank you guys. Bye bye. Thank you, Savi. Thank you.